When there is no political or social freedom, poets tend to break through writing a kind of spiritual freedom that offers resistance to the condition of unfreedom outside. Poets are sometimes gatekeepers, watchdogs of freedom. Nobody assigns them this role, but traditionally, literature has been a site of freedom, a kind of custodian of freedom in dark, unfree, enslaving times. And this function, essentially moral and spiritual, but certainly political as well in its ramification, invariably turns poets into disobedient citizens. It is not for nothing that all structures of power, whether political, economic, religious, etc., invariably mistrust poets and writers. In fact, if poets are not mistrusted, there must be something wrong with them. They are indeed and often seen as a subversive force by all kinds of powerful people, including politicians, religious leaders, ideologues, moral policemen, media barons, market movers, etc. Freedom all too often needs a spokesman, and without meaning to be so, invariably, poets and writers become such spokesmen. Poetry, at its best, embodies, protects, enhances, intensifies, deepens, sustains freedom. But characteristically, poets also integrate freedom as well. Poets are strange animals anyway. I'm from dog to animal now. Poets are strange animals anyways. For them, every aspect of life and existence, of experience and struggle, of feeling and wisdom, of truth and certainties is open to question, to exploration. What gives them credibility and moral authenticity is the fact that they question themselves. They try to speak truth as it appears to them, but they also question and doubt it. In keeping with this rather complex tradition of truth and doubt, poets and writers tend to refuse to be either magisterial or judgmental. Judge not, or they shall be judged, as the Bible said. Our times have been recently named as post-truth times. Truth is under assault from all sides. It seems to be in a minority. The lies have claimed almost all its spheres, a majority. This is perhaps historically an unprecedented situation. Lies never had such opportunities, technologies, and human support of intelligence and surveillance to spread fast. They displace, surround, overwhelm, marginalize truth. Sometimes one feels that the world lives more by lies than by truth. The world changes faster by lies than by truth. The poets and writers, on the other hand, stick to truth. They continue to imagine, to make fiction of, to assert the presence of truth. Unlike politicians, ideologues, technocrats, they fabricate lies to reveal truth. One of the severe constraints of our time is that the freedom to speak, explore, interrogate truth by poets and writers is getting narrow and many a time go unnoticed. It may indeed be an illusion that readers and the society need to know truth as poets believe. Another aspect, disquieting and bizarre of our times, happens to be the growing amnesia. Cultural, historical, politics and media, in a most unholy collaboration, have launched a campaign to make people forget. A campaign aimed at spreading and feeding on amnesia. Poetry, on the other hand, thrives in, rooted in memory. It makes you not to forget, although always to forget. In poetry and literature, truth and memory are all organically related to freedom. You are not free if you are not free to speak, to express truth, to imagine and remember. There is, of course, a decline of the idea of the liberal, causing serious diminution of liberal imagination across the globe. There is no solace or defense for what is happening in India for some years now. A new civic style, a parallel politics have emerged which are prompting violence, hatred amongst communities, lynching, bulldozing, killing in the name of selective, almost mostly inauthentic memories. It can provide some moral satisfaction to us that the majority, an overwhelming majority of poets and writers in the Indian languages have been stoutly, vocally, and creatively opposed to this fearful politics, and most have not fallen a prey to it. Writers have suffered many kinds of assault on their freedom over the democratic decades, but more recently, as many as 4 writers were gunned down, and the identification and prosecution of the murderers have been moving extremely slowly. The fearful ethos is promoting self-censorship, and unfortunately, a democratic state has been reduced to being a mute and unmoved witness to such killings. It would appear as if ones who hate and kill people with whom they do not agree are free to spread hatred and kill with impunity. The poets are not free to speak or insist on their truth. A spontaneous outrage among the creative community in 2015 resulted in return of many awards by writers and others, did rattle the dominant political setup, but nothing much has been done by the state to protect poets, writers, and have the intolerance mongers booked under law. Recently in India, the public discourse, the socio-political debates on the electronic media have become very crass, quarrelsome, abusive, resulting in a massive public devaluation of language, of debate and dissent, of disagreement and dialogue. The course seemed to be becoming the norm and could be taken as a provocative warning. In popular mind, not only memory and imagination are getting displaced, but also all nuances and subtleties, all complexities are being ironed out. The truth speaker, the complexity are in deep jeopardy, for they may lose readers and audience. They stand condemned without scrutiny. Media, new technology, etc., are all very enthusiastically promoting a climate of linguistic flatness. Not only many languages in the world at the edge of extinction, but also the plurality of insights, memories, wisdom of most languages are now facing a challenge. Many writers get driven to write in a language not their own. The cultural diversity of the world is critically dependent on its linguistic diversity. A concerted effort is needed to protect and sustain, nourish and enrich the linguistic ecology of the human world. We have seen in 20th century, in particular, the singularity of ideology, belief, wisdom, truth, etc., all too often prove to be dangerous to poetic freedom. Some of them sadly caused mindless genocide across the globe through wars, tyrannies, etc. Literature and poets are almost genetically and spiritually opposed to singularity. They thrive, and their freedom of imagination and truth speaking emerges from plurality. India offers perhaps a rather unique instance of irrepressible plurality, so much that it can be argued that in India nothing is allowed to be or remain singular for long. Gods, religions, language, philosophies, customs, cuisines, costumes are all plural. With 8 religions, 6 classical schools of philosophy and spiritual wisdom, 4 Vedas, the holiest scriptures, more than 700 languages, only 26 recognized by the Constitution, two major classical music with hundreds of versions, some quite subversive, the so-called original. India, as a civilizational enterprise, has survived through plurality, openness, and accommodation. It is not that the journey has been hassle-free. It has been a long, epic struggle over millennia to protect and sustain, deepen, and enrich the plurality. And the writers and poets and literatures of India have, over the millennia, again embodied, enacted, and nourished this plurality. This millennia lasting plurality is today in deep jeopardy in India. Evil forces have been unleashed by politics, religion, and even applied media, the new technology, which undermine plurality, making it culturally suspect, politically intolerable, and socially annoying. With more than 4,000 communities in India, the second largest Muslim population in the world, there are well orchestrated attempts to create almost as a daily routine others, religious others, caste others, intellectual others, social others. And the others are being made to feel and accept that they have to live as second-class citizens. Nationalistic fervor, warmongering, displacement, harassment, lynching, killing, etc. are all manifestations of this massive othering. Literature, as well as poetry, on the other hand, as a major Latin American writer has asserted, demolishes the duality of us and they by revealing in many different ways that they are us and we are them. The attempt to undermine plurality is in fact an attempt to undermine the spiritual basis of literature, which also celebrates and reveals the huge diversity and the deep complexity of the world, of the human condition. Literature and poetry cannot survive as a creative media, as a spiritual genre, revealing the inner and outer worlds of man, their interconnection, if the world is sought to be converted into a singular, uniform construct. It is ironical that all possible instruments of freedom, such as democratic ethos, new technologies, mass circulation, education, media, etc., are being used to hamper, obstruct freedom. Poetry today takes place in an environment in which language is being devalued, made flat and uniform, a version of utter banality. Poetry endeavors to keep language alive in its intensity, moral rigor, and emotional precision and strength, in all its warm, plural humanness. It is either language lit up by life or life lit up with language. This is what Proust, I think, said. Poetry is an unceasing, interminable satyagraha against simplification, uniformity, and totalization. In times of growing tyrannical tendency, it is almost civil disobedience. I mean, these are phrases that I'm borrowing from Gandhi. Yeah. Also, in times of amnesia, misappropriation of memory, poetry is a house of memory. It does not allow us to forget, does not allow us and itself to forget that there is a vast, beautiful, rich, intense plurality of life beyond politics, social reality, religions, and media. Truth is not exclusive, if at all, to poetry. But there is no poem which does not engage with truth. In the end, let me say that the creative freedom must be acknowledged as an essential ingredient, an inalienable component of all freedom. In our times, we, the writers and poets, must demand freedom to imagine, to dream alternatives, to blaspheme, interrogate, critique given socio-political systems, economic structures, moralities, beliefs, prejudices, etc. To speak truth to power and others, to themselves, to dissent, to be disobedient, to forge the uncreated conscience of the race, as Joyce said, to deviate from the given or the beaten path. Friends, while the world seems darker than yesterday, we are lucky to remain human, lucky to be poets, lucky that we can still create, imagine, question, and celebrate life and reality, lucky that in spite of all the mounting attacks on freedom, we are still free. Thank you very much.